If you've watched yesterday's video, you know that insulin resistance is a basic of polycystic ovarian syndrome. And PCOS is a major cause of infertility. Medical professionals are quite quick to prescribe metformin to women with PCOS. Metformin, if you don't know, is a diabetes drug that improves insulin sensitivity. I'm not saying that's wrong, but in my personal opinion, drugs shouldn't be the first resource for insulin resistance. I think diet should be. Today I'd like to discuss insulin resistance and inflammation and how it all affects fertility. First of all, when you eat sugar. And by sugar I mean not only refined sugar, I mean starches like bread, even whole grain, pasta, potatoes, sweet fruit. All of these cause blood sugar to significantly rise, which causes an insulin spike. I've talked about this in more detail in yesterday's video, but let's recap. Insulin ferries sugar into the cells under normal conditions, and when the sugar is delivered, the cells in the pancreas they sense the lower blood glucose and stop producing insulin. When we eat too much sugar, the cells at some point shut down and don't absorb it all because they're full. And that then creates insulin resistance. The sugar and insulin then builds up in the blood vessels. And the pancreas, which senses high blood sugar, sends out even more insulin. So first, the problem is that insulin and other carriers can be quite caustic and inflame the blood vessels, which then shut down receptors even further. And as a result, the level of inflammation grows, and it's a vicious cycle. This then causes the body to bandage the inflammation, and it's doing this with LDL cholesterol. So you might know LDL as a bad cholesterol, but LDL doesn't cause the heart disease. It's at the end of the day the inflammation. If we wouldn't be inflamed, we wouldn't produce that much LDL in the first place. And when LDL is too high, because we are inflamed, then that reduces the circulation, which is necessary for proper development of sex cells and fetal development. Second, insulin also promotes insulin growth factor, which causes things to grow like cysts, fibroids, and unfortunately even cancer cells. And this then can further promote problems with fertility. Elevated insulin levels, they also contribute to or may even cause the abnormalities seen in the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis. And this one usually secretes hormones involved in reproduction. And with high insulin, the secretion is affected and creates an imbalance. And fourth, as mentioned in my other video, insulin resistance leads to abdominal fat. And visceral fat tissue possesses an enzyme that is responsible for the paradox of having both excess androgens, and these are responsible for unwanted hair growth, and estrogens, which inhibits follicle-stimulating hormone via negative feedback, and therefore fertility. So we have those four things. How insulin resistance affects your fertility. What is it that leads to insulin resistance? Yeah, we covered this yesterday, but it is a diet high in sugar and refined carbohydrates. In excess. So we are always talking a diet in excess of these things. If you eat one cake once a week, that does not cause insulin resistance. It's the excess. And on top of all of that, what doesn't help as well is the poor quality of fats such as conventional meat and oils like corn, soy, and canola. We have toxic chemicals. Then our gut health is not the very best usually, which therefore affects everything further. And we have nutrient deficiencies. we need to make our insulin sensitive again. And this then therefore reduces the inflammation, which then reduces LDL and restores our hormonal balance, and then the health of our reproductive organs. If you're experiencing trouble conceiving, for some of you, it might be totally enough to just address the insulin resistance. So when you hear about women who went keto and got pregnant soon after, this is when most likely insulin resistance was the only root cause. For some of you, it may be a bit more complicated than that. So in my 3-month program, I will also address not just the insulin resistance, but also other root causes like heavy metal toxicity, parasites, mold exposure, and yes, an underlying cause can be as well undealt emotions, so we address that too. And it may sound a bit new agey, but it actually isn't. Your organs store emotions, and these can make you sick too. Ancient Eastern civilizations have long understood this, and this is why traditional Chinese medicine addresses this. Every organ corresponds to the energy of a certain emotion, and all emotions are inevitable. They are totally normal, of course, and normally they don't cause disease when they just arise in a daily life and we are able to deal with this. But Chinese medicine considers emotions as pathological when they are repressed, contained, or just expressed intensely, often without control or out of context. So we have, for example, grief and depression. They are in the lungs and large intestines. Fear is the emotion of the kidneys and the bladder. Anger is the emotion of the liver and the gallbladder. I can relate to that one quite nicely. But I'm talking about this definitely as well in more detail in the 3-month program, and how we can release all of our undealt emotions. We also address how we deal with stress in a more effective way. And there's no denial that stress does affect your fertility in a very negative way. The stress hormone cortisol can shut down your reproductive system fully and completely. And in the 3-month program, I will give you plenty of tools on how to lower your stress levels significantly. Why is it so important that we address insulin sensitivity before you get pregnant? And why is it as well important that you stay on track when you're pregnant? We know that children born to women with type 2 diabetes or gestational diabetes, or who just have higher levels of blood sugar during their pregnancy, those children of those women are more likely to have low insulin sensitivity, which is a risk of becoming diabetic themselves. And women with PCOS are well known to have a higher risk of gestational diabetes. There's one study that suggests that these children, that this increased risk appears to be due, or at least in part, to their prenatal exposure to relatively high maternal blood glucose. So it is important to address insulin sensitivity before you get pregnant, so that you minimize the risk of gestational diabetes during your pregnancy. How do we now improve insulin sensitivity, you may ask? Of course, there is just one answer. Of course, it's not medication, when you ask me. It is that we need to alter our diet, so that most of our calories come from leafy vegetables, protein and fat, and not from carbohydrates. And not snacking between meals brings your blood insulin levels down too. A high protein, moderate to high fat diet helps to not feel hungry all the time, because you don't have all the time those insulin spikes. And I know it's extremely hard to change your eating habits, but you won't get around this. Because you have to do it in the long run. It's important to stay on track throughout your pregnancy and postpartum as well, for your own sake, not just for your baby's sake. So this is why in my 3 months program you will receive the tools to help you to change your eating habits, and so you'll be able to stick to it in the long run. And the goal is that you don't feel deprived and constantly sorry for yourself. And you're not constantly thinking that you're missing out. The goal is that you eat the way you should be eating to stay healthy and feeling good about yourself. And so the part of addressing our emotions goes hand in hand with this, because those emotions are often leading our relationship around food, and they drive us to eat like we eat subconsciously. So addressing these emotions is just helping not just our physical health, as well as our emotional health and mental health. Now you're still in the cleanse. And during this week, I will send you another video about what foods exactly raise your blood sugar. So the foods you should limit and or totally avoid. And at the end of your cleanse, you receive a list of foods you can eat safely without a worry in the world. You can put that list on your fridge and just look at it, and you know if you should be eating this or if you shouldn't, and you can make a conscious choice. You got that, ladies. I don't doubt you got this. It's just a matter of time, and you are able to heal your body from the symptoms of PCOS and infertility. We will make your cycle regular. We get you ovulating each and every cycle and pregnant. Stay tuned for the next video and enjoy the rest of your day. So you're still in your cleanse now. So during this week, I will send you another video on the foods that exactly raise your blood sugar and tell you the ones you should limit or even totally avoid. And at the end of your cleanse, you receive a list of foods you can eat safely without a worry in the world. You can hang this up your fridge so you know exactly what you should be putting into your mouth and what you shouldn't. So you have the choice. You can make a conscious choice. I'm sure you got this, ladies. I am convinced you got this. And I know you can heal your symptoms, and I know you can heal your uterus and become pregnant. It's just a question of time. So, enjoy this wonderful day, and I'll see you with another video.